Welcome everyone to this podcast, this midweek podcast, as we continue on in a brand new series at Discovery called Full House. Now, today we're going to be discussing the weekend message that I preached on Father's Day. And so joining me today is our young adults pastor, Zeke.
Howdy.
And our Compass pastor, Doug Paws.
Hey.
Hey. It's good to have you guys here, and thank you so much for joining us, for watching or listening along. On the weekend, we spoke about the 4 phases of manhood. Now, it's a mishmash together of a whole bunch of different anthropological studies, theological studies, and social studies that have been done over many, many years. And I put it to our church on the weekend that men go through 4 stages. They're not necessarily linear, but you can see a progression through them. The stage of the beloved son, the stage of the cowboy, the stage of the king, and then the stage of the sage. We talked about the different elements of life that are developed in each of those stages as we go through. So the beloved son is all about identity formation. The cowboy is all about adventure and exploring limits. The king is all about responsibility, and then the sage is all about wisdom. Now, the task of today's podcast and the thing that we get to do today is explore and deep dive into those 4 phases and think a little bit more about how those 4 phases are expressed. What are some of the things that happen inside of those in the life of a man, and also what might help us progress from one to the next. So I've got some specific questions that I'd love to ask you guys. But before we begin, is there any kind of off the top of the dome comments that you guys want to make? Immediate impact from the message, things that it made you think about initially?
I loved that, even though on the weekend you were primarily speaking to the guys of our church, there was a really great link, and a lot of the feedback was that what you brought into how you can support, how you can stand with, how you can journey with men in your life, significant, men. So, and I think it's going to be the same in this space as we chat and discuss it. But be great. Like, it's not, this podcast not just for guys. It's for the ladies as well. And how we can be supporting other men in our world. I think it's awesome.
That's a good pickup. Yeah,
Yeah, I think one of the things that you brought out, Matt, was that principle of it doesn't matter who we are, we are going to grow. Like that's a non-negotiable. So how do you do that in a healthy way? Because we know, good things grow. There are bad things that grow as well. Yeah. Like, for instance, cancer. Everything grows. But how to do that in a healthy way, I think, was one of the things that I was really impressed by Sunday's message was that whole part of how do we grow through these different stages in a healthy way, and what are the elements that help us to do that in a healthy way.
Yeah, great.
I thought that kind of opened up that thought process for me.
Yeah, great. That's good. And you're right, both in terms of what both of you guys have said, in reiterating that we are going to grow. Maturity is optional, whether we grow in maturity, totally. But growth that will happen. And so we want to be growing in maturity, and we talked on the weekend about the different scriptures that kind of relate to that, and the different ways that the Bible teaches us about that. And yes, you're right. If you've joined onto this podcast and you're about to turn it off thinking, oh, this is just a dude thing, relax. This is going to help you. The weekend's message and what we spoke about on Sunday on Father's Day was really tailored to explore some of those phases of manhood, but also so that it empowers everyone else, the rest of us, men included, who are with friends and all of that, to be able to encourage, to support, to continue to disciple one another. So let's begin with the beloved son stage. We talked about how sons are born into a family, born into a household, and one of the biggest questions is, what is my name? Who am I? Where have I come from? What context have I been born into? What's my family's story? What's my history? What are my parents like? All of these these connections that are being kind of hardwired into the life of a son. And in that space, identities being formed. Who I am, my name, what my name means. Now, not just my name, like Matt, Zeke, or Doug, but who I am, who has God made me to be. And we find that so much trauma begins at a really young age in men. And that those seeds of insecurity begin so early when love is conditional or based upon performance. So my question is to you guys, what can parents and grandparents do to create safe environments that form healthy identity in young boys, in young men?
Well, I chat a little bit into it because I'm got a son who's in the beloved son stage.
Yeah.
So got a 2.5-year-old and another one on the way. So it's been really interesting, and it does, for me, it changed a big perspective shift in me, because I was even thinking back, and one of the things that I had to wrestle with early on in fatherhood was reconciling the way that I was parented, and then looking at when I became a parent, what were the cultural differences that now we have in our world that were not around when I was a kid. So creating a safe space, like I remember being a young kid, and especially this notion of men being strong, not being emotional, not being, I guess, and don't show your feelings outwardly.
Right.
And I think in probably maybe the last 20 years, that's changed. It's actually become men should be, and I think it's a great shift. But I think one of the things that I realized really early on, and even though my son's still quite young and maybe just coming into that stage where he's starting to understand his emotions a little bit more, is what am I doing to create environments where he feels comfortable being honest with how he's feeling, being open with the challenges that he's facing. And I know they're not deep challenges right now, but my challenge that I've had to wrestle with is that not trying to push him into the next stage, not trying to move him along, allow him to be in the stage that he's in, and allow me to be in the stage that I'm in. You know, like I remember a lot of frustration, like trying to teach your kids something. And I remember like moments where I'm like, man, I don't really want to be continually teaching this and continually doing that. And maybe in another day I would have gone, no, I don't want to do this anymore. And immediately the trust and the safe place that we've tried to build could be decimated really quickly. Right. So I've just sort of been looking at the culture and being really acutely aware of the messages that are being put to young men and being put to young people. Yeah. Being aware of those messages actually helps you to counteract the culture so that you can support the beloved son, support those who are in the developmental identity stage. I think that's really important.
Sure. And for you, Doug, your boys are
Cowboys,
a little bit older than Zeke's Zeke's son. Yeah. What are your reflections on that stage?
Yeah, I think probably the most important thing, and this is something that my wife Mel has always instilled in our boys and in our family culture, is that we will always fight for the relationship with them. Right. So no matter what season they're going through, or what, you know, like the boys get to year 9, and year 9 generally can be a pretty feral year for kids at school. Schools recognise this. That's why they do all of these incredible fun programs for the year 9s, right? Because they know that there's these kids are not going to learn anything in a regular classroom with all of that. Right. So they develop programs that are going to help the stage that the kids are in, and I think but having that that anchor of relationship for our boys was always really, really important for us. And so if the boys knew that it didn't matter where they were at or what they were doing, that mum and dad were solid, that they loved, that they were loved, and that they had somewhere to belong at home. I think that was a really important identity piece for our boys.
Great. So
it's like one of the things that I remember from my dad, just spending time with me. Like
Yeah.
I still remember. Maybe I was 5 or 6. I remember doing some woodwork in the shed with Dad, and I remember him saying, "Hey, let the saw do the cutting.
Right.
Like you don't have to push the blade
yeah.
through the wood.
Yeah.
Just let the saw do the work."
Yeah, yeah.
And like that's a thing that has stayed with
with
me.
you,
Every
yeah.
time I cut a piece of wood by hand, I remember that
Yeah.
because it's the time that my dad spent with me
Yeah.
to teach me something and
Yeah.
to give me something for like a life skill. Like that was really important.
If I interject, like you spoke about the threat to this stage being conditional love, and you spoke about it in the terms of the love not being based upon their performance and what they do and what they don't do. I think sometimes just as much of a risk, and I know, like I'm starting to feel this, is that when I've had a busy week, love not being conditional on my place that I'm at.
Yeah,
'Cause
right.
it can be easy sometimes for me to come home and go, I've had a busy week. I've been at work all week. I've had a crazy couple of big meetings. And my love can be conditional to my son, even though he hasn't done anything wrong.
No, it's but because it's based
But
on
because
your
of me.
ability. Yeah, that's a really good
And
pickup.
so, like, being aware of my state and not allowing my state to reflect on my son, that being conditional love. So that was something that I've just been thinking about
That's
since your
huge.
message.
That's huge. Yeah, that's actually really good. And I wish I had said that on the weekend. That's a really good one to think through, because we were thinking about love being conditional based upon the performance of the child.
Yeah.
But what about our own performance
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
our own level of energy?
Yeah.
We've still got to provide unconditional love that's not conditional upon our power and our energy levels. No, that's really, really good.
Because they watch
Everything.
They see everything.
Yeah.
And if they absorb that from you, they're going, oh, so if I have a bad day, like that was one of the things, with our boys in year 9, we said you get 1 year to be feral, 1 year, and that's it. Condition was they were never allowed to be rude.
Yeah.
They were never allowed to be disrespectful, but they were allowed to, acknowledging those feelings, growth in themselves, But yeah, because they see it all and they absorb it. And they go, man,
You get one free pass. That's it.
one free pass.
Love that.
I look forward to year 9, Doug. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's right.
Thanks for the hope.
All right, let's think about the cowboy stage a little bit. We talked a little bit about that, how the cowboy stage is all about exploring limits, exploring the world, getting a sense of what's out there. How strong am I? Where am I weak? Where am I vulnerable? When am I esteemed? How do people relate to me? That sense of becoming aware of the world that's around and exploring. And, it's in this cowboy stage that hobbies are expressed, and it's either outdoors or study or gaming or education. These are all ways that cowboys explore the world. And so, but often what we find is that this cowboy stage can be lasting longer and longer and longer, and kind of this protracted seasons of exploration.
Yeah.
And almost, was the title of that movie, Failure to Launch.
Yeah.
What causes that in men? Because I know that for some ladies, they find that frustrating.
That Peter Panism that you talked about for sure.
Yeah. I just want to stay in Never Never Land, because it's awesome. It's perfect. I can fly, But if you're, the failure to take on responsibility. And that doesn't mean you have to get married and have kids, because some men, that's not their call, right? If you're called, you might be called to take on responsibility in a different way. Businesses, workplace, extended family, whatever. So that's all good. What stops that? What stops that progression?
We are in a highly individualistic society that promotes the idea of I do what I want to do when I want to do it and how I want to do it. And so in a society that says that being individualistic is not just a good thing, it's the goal. Being who you are and who you want to be is the highest value in our society. Like you spoke about, that next stage of the king is about having responsibility. The cowboy stage is almost about having authority but no responsibility. And so it's like, it's almost as if you try, like especially young guys, and I see this, and I even see it in my own life. It was the want to be the ruler of my own life and my own destiny, but there comes a point where you being the ruler of your own life and own destiny, there comes a point where either you learn that you got to take that responsibility and you got to move forward, or the world forces you to have to take responsibility, and things start falling apart, and you can't hold all of the different things that you're doing. So, and I think in the society that promotes individualistic ideas, people being autonomous, Jody speaks about it, you doing you. Like, I think that can be a massive barrier. And I think we see that in lots of men now, that cowboy stage extending out to mid-20s, 30s, mid-30s now, like sometimes. So it's a challenging thing to address when culture is almost the opposite.
Saying, for sure. Yeah. Doug?
I think part of that too is I think we've had a fair pendulum swing in society following the feminist movement coming out, where the strength of women, which was like for decades denied and suppressed, has come out. But the opposite reaction of that is that guys have, or this idea of what manhood is, has come into a bit better focus, but then sort of swung a bit the other way as well. So that the idea of manly manhood is seen as a negative. And I think how our society has reacted to that is oversimplified what it is to be a man, and kind of suppressed actually finding what a healthy version of being a man in society is. So I think we've sort of overreacted and then created this generation of men who are unwilling to take on the responsibilities of manhood in a lot of ways, and some of that, and not in the macho kind of way, but being the guy that's super respectful of women and understanding of feminine issues and attitudes, and how do we as a society hold each other up. I think we need to get to a point where that levels out a bit. And I think our kids, my kids are sort of mid-20s now, they've seen that societal reaction and gone, there is a reaction against the tough guy macho idiot, which I get, and which I think is a good thing. But also I think that we've missed on passing on, how do you move into this stage of being a king out of the cowboy thing? And I think that's contributed to that elongation of the.
It's almost like guys don't know, like with the movements in the feminist movement. It's awesome. It's so great that now women.
We're three are married to three very strong,
independent, like
wise, front foot.
That's right.
Women, right?
Yeah.
Which we love,
yeah,
and we would want to celebrate.
But the challenge is I don't want to overgeneralize, but I want to. I know some people aren't going to fit into this, but sometimes guys don't know how to handle that.
Yeah.
Because again, like in an individualistic society, when we start entering into, like, I don't want to like generalize, but often when we start moving to that responsibility stage is when we need to start not operating unto ourselves. We need to start submitting. Either we start going into a relationship, we move into a workplace, we move into something where we don't have authority, but we have responsibility. And I think it's that pendulum of like, we don't know how to operate when we're not we're not the controlling power in
Right,
it, or
right,
when we need to share
When
that
we need
power.
to share the power, yeah.
Because in days gone by, it was the guys lead, the guys do it all, and we run it, and that's how it is, and and it was not great. And
Yeah.
but now we have the opposite side of the spectrum where guys are struggling to understand how to hold their roles.
and how to co-lead or
Yeah.
share authority.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I think that's the challenge. Yeah.
That's the maturity piece, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, sure, we get chronologically older, but do we get more mature in our? Does our character line up with
Yeah.
where we are at in our stage, age and stage?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Very good. Yeah, I love that idea of, and sometimes, yeah, as you said, life just puts responsibility on you, and sometimes and you can see it go a few different ways, and sometimes the best thing for a young man is a whole load of responsibility. If it doesn't break you, you get stronger from it. Yeah. You have to learn to carry that weight. And it can either be a crushing weight or it can grow your muscles real quick and you can adapt. Okay, the King stage we talked about, and we are going to go long today on this podcast. I can feel it in my bones. The King stage we talked about, that weight of responsibility can become, all work and no play. Makes Jack a very dull boy. Kings in that stage, busy life, work pressures, family pressures, kids that are all at different stages, maybe a child who's in grade 9, like all of these things that are all going on, and men can feel underappreciated, undervalued. Man, I'm supporting the family, I'm doing all this, we're making all these plates spin, and I'm also trying to figure out how do I have a like a social life, and how do I still get out and, see some mates, or all of that kind of stuff. How do men in that stage retain the joy and hold on to and build the meaning inside of the container, right? Because it's all great to have a really beautiful house, but if the house isn't filled with beautiful things, it's not worth it, right? So how do we keep feeding into the inside rather than just making the outside? Because again, kings of making things on the outside look great.
Yeah.
But how about on the inside?
I'm still early on in the King stage, I would say, and so, but what I'm learning to do, and what helps me build meaning, is not having a view that's very narrow and very immediate. So, like when I think of my son, and I think about the meaning that I build, I can work for his life now, and like for what he's doing right now. But I think of the day, one thing that motivates me and builds meaning is I think of the day when I'm going to be like my dad a couple years ago, standing at the end of the aisle, looking at my son getting married to his lifelong partner. I think of those days. I think of the days when my son enters primary school and graduates high school and does all the things, the dreams that that I got to experience, like the amazing life-changing moments. And I feel, and when I look at that and I look at those big moments, I go, often the things that create meaning often cost a lot of you. Yeah. And so in the immediate, you can go, man, this is a lot of work. This is a lot of challenge, a lot of it almost seems like plowing the field. It seems like a lot of work. But I look back and I look ahead and I go, all of these things that I desire for my kids and for my family, and even for me, I long to be the dad, the grandfather who has kids around him, and I long to be that. And I go, that's going to cost me a lot. Yeah. But what I'm spending today is going to be paid back fivefold in my later years, fivefold when I'm older.
Yeah. So you're taking a really, really long view. That's your to build meaning. You're saying zoom out. Yeah. How about for you, Doug?
Yeah, I think that's really important. Looking towards what that legacy kind of stuff is. For us, I think it was about, or for me in this stage, and at that stage with our boys, it was really about the the moments that we could do now.
Right.
So for me, working was not I live to work. It was I work so that I can live, so that we can do the weekends away with the boys, so that we can resource ourselves to have do meaningful stuff with our boys that is going to build that relationship, so that when you get to that stage where your kids are getting married or they're graduating from university and stuff, you have the relationship with them to be able to celebrate that.
Sure.
I think and I think one of the moments that Mel and I realised that we missed a bit of that was while we were renovating our house.
Right.
We spent a lot of our annual leave doing a big chunk of the renovation. Instead of saying, we've got 2 weeks, where are we going to go, what are we going to do, we missed a few of those, and we look back on that now and go, they were really pivotal moments that we could have really invested in our family relationship.
So something you'd change.
I think that
you'd
would be
change
something
it.
I'd change. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? And you build up as you get older, or at least I do. There are those moments where you think, I made the right decision there, probably would change that.
Yeah.
100%. and I don't know if you call them regrets, but you do think back and go, there are some things, of course I grew from it and I learnt from it, but you're able to think, I would have changed that differently, but it also doesn't create a whole bunch of shame.
No.
It's just more like, I think one of the things for Kings that's really important is keeping the main thing, right? Like, build your life with Jesus.
Yeah.
Build your faith life, build your prayer life. Because, like I said on Sunday, if you cut yourself off from that, you cut yourself off from the key source of meaning and everything. Yeah. Like, what do you got?
Yeah.
If you don't have a thriving relationship with Jesus, you are bound to put your hope and meaning in temporal things, in things that are going to burn up, or waste away. And so Jesus' command, put your treasure in heaven. The meaning of that, I think, needs to be central, because I think as well, when we stay connected to Jesus, particularly through the stage of the highest level of responsibility that we'll have in our life, it gives us the means to be able to work that through. The spiritual empowering, the connections with other people. And so I just want to encourage the people who feel like they're in the King stage right now, stay connected to Jesus, stay connected to church, because it's going to feel like the first thing that you can cut off the list. But it's actually the last thing you can cut off the list. It needs to be priority 1, not sit at priority 10, which is the one that, I'll get to it when I get to it. There's sometimes I have those exercises at the gym where I've got like 8 or 7 or 8 exercises, and the last 2 are kind of like accessory movements that are just optional. I do all the main ones, and then if I'm still got energy, I'll do the last 2. Feels like that with church sometimes with people. All my main ones are kids and job and all that, and then my accessory movements are church. And so we should do that as a movement right at the top. All right. Finally, we're going to bring this to a close. So this is going to be the last question and also the conclusion. Think about the sages in your life. What have they done, or what do they do to impart wisdom to you? The wise voices, what is it that you appreciate about them in your world?
All of the sages I know tend to be, for me, the greatest encouragers of me. As I'm thinking ahead across the many different stages I've seen in my life, they often have a very good encouragement, build up, strengthening characteristic. And in that relationship built through, just encouragement and love and support, it opens me up to be able to receive sometimes the hard message.
correction.
Yeah. And so that's one of the main characteristics I've seen in stages in my life: the encouragement, that you feel like they're behind you, pushing you on. Yeah.
I love that.
It's not often I'm standing at the top of the mountain looking down at you on your journey. Come up here.
Yeah.
It's we're behind you, pushing you up.
Yeah.
We're with you in this. So
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
100% agree with that.
Yeah.
For me, it's the guys who help me to relocate myself.
Okay.
Like, help me to just, hey, step out of it for a minute and stop, have a look at where you're at and how's that going for you. Like, it's that kind of, relocating thing, which I think is really important, especially in the king stage, like you were saying, Matt, when you've got all the plates spinning.
Yeah.
Like, you can easily just go until you drop, without and not have those voices speak into you and help you stop for a minute and just go, do you need 9 plates or like how many plates do you want? Do you want to add a couple more? Like, how's that going to go, sort of thing. So, but yeah, definitely those encouraging guys that say, hey, like, I see you, I'm behind you.
yeah.
Go well, kind of thing. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And again, just encouragement for the sage voices who are watching or listening. We need your encouragement. We need your offering of wisdom that comes as wisdom, not as, hey, let me give you some advice. The same for me. The sages in my life the ones who've been most helpful are the ones where I've never doubted their support of me.
Yeah.
And I've never doubted their intentions for wanting to support me.
Yeah.
I've just always thought, man, what a blessing to have this guy who's done all this life and all this experience and chalked up all these runs on the board. And he just wants to support me. And, I know I didn't do a great job, but he told me that I did a pretty good job and that I should have another go. And those kinds of things are so powerful and important.
Can I just add as well? Like, I don't know if I'm reading too much into your metaphors of the different stages, but I feel like every son needs a king and every cowboy needs a sage.
Yeah.
I feel like there's that gap, like, because I remember being a cowboy and I remember my parents trying to shape and correct me, and sometimes that didn't go well, and it's because you're trying to disconnect from all the voices that you've lived with your whole life. I would say to the cowboys who are listening, and if you can self-identify yourself as a cowboy, find a sage.
Nice.
Find a sage and find multiple sages around you that can support you and encourage you, because I think those are the people that are going to help you transition from that cowboy stage to the king stage.
Yeah.
Dude, it's spot on. So Joseph Campbell in The Hero's Journey, he talks about that. There's an age where a boy gets to the point where the voice of his father is no longer the predominant voice in his life, and it goes to being peers or like an uncle, like an older uncle kind of figure. So that the image is in story form is Luke and Obi-Wan. Luke knows about his dad, but he's disconnected from his dad and he doesn't want to be like his dad, but even though he knows about him. But he wants to be, but Obi-Wan kind of takes him in. So Obi-Wan's the sage in that, and Luke's the cowboy, right? Who's like just wild and free doing his thing, and he has to then grow into who he's going to become. So you're spot on. That's it's true. And so that's why I think we can see a lot of these stages in multiple different kind of in different formats and different different models. So guys, it's been absolutely unreal chatting about this. We have gone a little bit longer, so thanks for your patience, thanks for listening, thanks for being with us. We're going to be back next week. Zeke, you are preaching Sunday as we continue this series. Why don't you just give us a teaser for that? And then you'll be back next week.
I will be back
unpacking,
next week.
unpacking the weekend. But why don't you give us a teaser for what's ahead?
We're looking at what does it mean as someone of faith? How do you reconcile relationships, and what does forgiveness look like? And so we're going to be focusing on Matthew 18 and going through that, and what are some practical things that forgiveness does in us that helps us, really humble ourselves. And so I'm looking forward to going through the parable of the unforgiving servant.
Wow.
So I'm looking forward to it.
Let's go. Well, guys, again, it's been awesome. Thanks so much for joining us. We will see you on socials. We'll see you on Sunday, either on site or online at Discovery Church. But for now, God bless you. We'll see you later.
See ya.